Welcome in everyone today to a very exciting and special episode of American Joyride. I'm joined today by Greg Coker. He is a former 160th SOAR pilot, and he flew AH-6 Little Bird choppers. Greg, thank you very much for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor, and I truly appreciate you contacting me. And yeah, we're going to talk about some things today, and I think it's important. It's critical to the history of this country and all Americans to know what we're doing out there. And, you know, I wrote a book about it, so we'll talk more about that later. Yeah, thank you.
Well, Greg, the honor is all mine. Like I said in the intro, you were 160th SOAR pilot. Could you explain to the audience kind of what the 160th SOAR is and what separates it from, you know, the rest of the pilots out there?
You bet. So, I'll go way back. 1981 is when the unit actually was brought together after the failed attempt of the hostage rescue in Iran in 1980. So they came back, Colonel Beckwith, which was the Delta commander and the commander of that mission in Iran, and he told his leadership that he wanted Army pilots flying for Delta. So they put together Black Hawks and AH-6 Little Birds, and that was the first 160th at that time in 1981. They started to train up for a second hostage rescue attempt. And of course, President Reagan was elected and they released the hostages. So they continued throughout the years, and they were we were a very quiet unit then, very small, and of course a special operations unit. So we support Delta and the Rangers. So when this country goes to war, or the President of the United States has a mission, that's who he calls. So we carry the operators, we carry the Rangers to the target, and then I flew AH-6 Little Birds, and that's an attack helicopter. So we provide precision surgical close air support for that ground force at the target or going to the target. So over the years, the 160th, they've developed many techniques and tactics. They've tested equipment. We are somewhat the test bed for all of military rotary wing operations. And yeah, so we will find some technology or night vision goggles or whatever the case, and hey, we'll test it. Yes, it's good. No, it's not any good. Let's try something else. But once we find things that work for us, then we push that out to the rest of the world now. So,
and like you were just mentioning, the Little Bird is an attack helicopter. Black Hawk Down. The anniversary was just a few days ago here. For anyone who's watching, who's seen the movie, they're like the bubble helicopters that swoop in and light up all the targets on the ground. I have to say to you, I saw a comment from a former Delta Force guy, and someone had made a remark on Instagram. He said, well, how useful can a Little Bird be if it can only bring 4 guys into the gunfight? And the guy, the Delta guy responded like, well, that's totally dependent on who the 4 guys coming into the gunfight are, which I thought was an excellent response. So how long were you in flying Little Birds before you saw combat for the first time?
Oh, goodness. I got to the unit in 93, and let's see, so it was 2001 was my first combat mission in Afghanistan. Yeah, so quite some time.
And what was that? I mean, how quickly in the invasion or once action kicked off were you in Afghanistan?
It was the first week of October.
So right away.
01, yes, sir. Yes.
So when 9/11, let's rewind a little bit. When 9/11 happens, could you walk the audience through where you are? Did you know right away what had happened? How long did it take for things to get figured out? What was your day like?
Well, we had 2 teams that were deployed. One was in Europe, and I'm talking teams of AH-6. And just let me clarify for the audience, sir. The 160th, we have 2 companies. There's A company and B company. And that's how units are broken down in the Army by company. So in an infantry company, there are approximately 100, 100 soldiers, infantrymen, riflemen, and then other companies. And in B company, we have pilots, we have crew chief, and then we have armament dogs or armament specialists that maintain our weapon systems. So the company at the time of pilots were probably, 21, 22 guys in B company. So A company, they have Little Birds, and they're the MH-6. Okay, they have the planks, just like you were talking about. The fellow on Instagram made a post. So I still refer to our soldiers as customers. It's just, we never could say Delta, or we never even could say 160th or Night Stalkers or whatever. So. But yeah, so the Delta guys will ride on those planks, and they can put 4 to 5 guys on one aircraft, and then a dog or whatever the case. So that's how we're configured to go to war, so to speak. Yeah.
So when you get to 9/11, when the towers get hit, what do you remember from that day?
Like I said, we had 2 teams out. We had one in Europe, one on the East Coast. We were back at Fort Campbell, and we had a range that day. We'd go to the range and shoot probably 3 times a week. So to maintain the standards in which we are held to, we have to shoot a lot. So 3 or 4 times a week, we'd go to our range there at Fort Campbell. I go into the gym. I was actually on the treadmill running. We have a little gym there where I lived on post, and the fellow that ran the gym, I kind of looked up at him, and he was ashen, pale looking. And he walked over to the TV, and he turned the TV on. He says, "Greg, you need to see this." And I was thinking, what in the world, could possibly be happening that I need to see this? Nobody's here, it's quiet time, and that's how I enjoy my workouts. But so I see this tower burning, and I was like, oh my God, that's the Twin Towers in New York. And it wasn't probably 30 seconds, the second plane hit the second tower. And I was like, oh my gosh. And at the time, we all wore beepers. So that's kind of how you could tell a special ops guy, I guess, because we always had a beeper on us, and the beeper goes off, you go to work. And my beeper went off, and they'll send they send a code that, hey, you need to get to work right now. And so I jumped off the treadmill, jumped in the car, took off, got to work. And again, it just happened, and there were still things happening as, we were coming to work. Some of us were at work, but, again, we're night stalkers and not day stalkers. We work at night, and we start our days kind of late. And then, we came in, and our standard operating procedures is, we went to work, we started preparing for combat, we started preparing to deploy, and we have to keep a group back at Fort Campbell all the time to respond to something that may come up. And it's called the bullet. I mean, it's out there, it's open source. It didn't used to be. Again, it was classified, you couldn't say any of that stuff. But since the movie Black Hawk Down and some other books that have been written, so I get nervous when I start saying those things, because I'm like, oh, I hope I don't get in trouble. But anyway, so yeah, we started to put our packages together, and we always keep our equipment, our helicopters, our gear locked and cocked and, ready to go. So when the aircraft from the Air Force lands, all we got to do is load and go where we're told to go. So we didn't, we were like, goodness gracious, what in the world's going on? But so there at Campbell is the 101st Airborne Division, and then 5th Group, Special Forces Group, and then the 160th. And I mean, nobody knew what was happening. We were in shock. And they're like, holy smokes. And then we got word that the Pentagon had been hit with another aircraft. And we're like, okay, this is a real deal. This is going down. And Yeah. So after that, it was pretty much a blur. I mean, our minds kick in, our bodies kick in. We just, we do what we're trained to do, and we got our things ready because we have to be able to deploy in 4 or 5 hours after the beeper goes off or whatever the case. And that was our focus at that time. Again, just, headquarters at Campbell, headquarters at Fort Bragg, at SOCOM, and USASOC up all the way to the Pentagon. And it was chaotic there. So yeah, we just waited for intelligence. We knew we were going somewhere, but we didn't know when and where. And it was pretty quick.
When you flew into Afghanistan, or did you fly into Afghanistan? Like, because I know Alan Mack says I think they came in from Kazakhstan or came in from Uzbekistan into the when he brought his guys over. How did you enter Afghanistan?
Yeah, we flew into Masura Island, which is a small island off the coast of Oman, and that's where we staged everybody, Delta Rangers, the 160th, and we had our Chinooks, and I think we landed there. It was probably the end of September, 1st of October. Pardon me. So we got there, we prepared for combat operations. At that point, we knew we were going into Afghanistan to start hitting targets of Al-Qaeda, to hunt Osama bin Laden, Omar, all of his leadership. And yeah, that was the mission given to us by the President of the United States at that time.
And when you get into Afghanistan, I mean, are you just firing? Do you have a list of targets you're hitting? I mean, is it a free fire? Is it all hell breaking loose? What's it like in the opening days?
It was, and I recall asking our JAG officer, or there are attorneys, and I said, "Hey, sir, what's the rules of engagement?" And he stands up and he says, "There are none." Yes. So if it was moving and it was met our criteria for a combatant, or we were fired upon, they got terminated. Yeah, it was pretty wild and Western those first few weeks.
Were you excited to get in the mix? I mean, what emotions were you feeling in the cockpit letting it fly against the guys who just killed thousands of Americans?
Oh, yes, sir. We were all pretty angry men, and we got there, and we wanted to go. We wanted to go. And I'd started out going up. I was the fire support officer for the task force. So my mission in the very early days, I had a dedicated AC-130 U model gunship. So we would take off, go up into Afghanistan, and engage targets of opportunity, like armor, personnel that were in defensive, postures, anti-aircraft, just anything we could find, we would shoot it. But we were also what we call setting the conditions, because we had planned for our raid on 19 October 2001 on Omar's place just west of Kandahar. So my mission was to reconnaissance or recce a route for the helicopters, because they were coming off a ship for this assault. And it just so happens that mission, it was the longest air assault in history that they conducted off the ship with Delta and the Rangers. The Rangers did a combat jump into an old airfield, and they set up a FARC for us, forward arming refueling points for the helicopters. But yeah, for the first couple weeks, my mission was to fly into Afghanistan every night on that AC-130 direct fires, and find targets of opportunity.
And didn't they miss Omar by it was mere minutes, right? Yeah. And for the audience, because there's a lot of young people watching this who probably have no idea who we're talking about right now. Could you explain who he was?
Yeah, he was the operations officer for Osama bin Laden. So he was second in command. And he was also one of the primary planners for the attack on the United States on 9/11.
And they missed, they just ever so narrowly missed them that night. I've read about it a lot.
Just seconds. Yes, sir.
So did you do more combat rotations in Afghanistan before going to Iraq, or was that were you one and done?
Yes, sir. That was, I mean, we had met the commander's intent for our deployment to Afghanistan. That was seek, find, destroy Al-Qaeda, and capture Osama bin Laden. Of course, we didn't capture him. I still say we killed him in January 2002, but that's another story. So that, yeah, we met the commander's intent, and into December, they're like, hey, we're going to roll you guys up, send you home, and we're going to start planning for the invasion of Iraq. And we're like, oh, okay. So when we get home, you know, we got briefed up on what we were getting ready to do for the next phase. Yeah.
And was there any doubt at that point that the invasion in Iraq was absolutely going to happen? Or was it more of like, we're planning this in case it does? Or did it feel like, no, we're definitely doing this?
Yeah, we were definitely doing it. Yes, sir. Yep.
And what was your role then? Let's pivot to Iraq, where I know you've been through some crazy experiences, which I can't wait to dive into. What was your role? Were you in the first wave in Iraq that went in?
Yes, sir. Our team we had 4 teams of AH-6s, and our mission was to attack early warning radar, early warning positions on the southern border over to kind of the southwest border. So our D-Day was 19 March 03, where the rest of the force went on 21 March 03. And again, you know, we were used to set the conditions for the invasion, to seek, destroy those early warning sites. And yeah, so those first 2 nights, we were the only show in town, man. We were out hunting and killing bad guys for, you know, all night for those first 2 days. Plus we had planned targets that we went to, you know, destroy, mostly the early warning sites.
Did the Iraqis have any capabilities to really combat you guys as you're coming in, or were they caught with their pants down essentially, and there was nothing they could do to stop you from rolling through?
No, they were more in a defensive, and this is just, you know, what I saw. They were more in a defensive posture. They knew something was, you know, going to happen. I mean, here comes this giant force from all over the world again. And yeah, so they probably prepped the best that they could do, and absolutely they had equipment that could, you know, shoot us down, and radars and things like that. So yeah, it was pretty exciting.
So that's what I was going to ask. So when you're flying through and you're hitting those early radar, you know, the radar warnings, things like that, are there like tracer rounds coming through the sky? Are there rockets flying? How much enemy fire are you taking?
There's quite a bit. Yes, sir. Yeah, quite a bit. But you just stay focused on the task at hand. And again, we operate at night, and we use that as our shield. And yeah, we were very, very successful. We were very successful for the whole time we were there.
Did you have any role in supporting in your pilot capacity? Because I know I've interviewed some guys that were in the Delta team that crossed over from Saudi Arabia right when the war kicked off, and they were moving throughout the country just obliterating targets. Yeah. And they had talked that they had, you know, helicopter support, airplane support. Were you supporting those Delta guys at all when they were making their way across the country?
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, we had in that C squadron, which just happened to be, you know, a bunch of buddies of mine, and, you know, Chris and yeah, several. Chris Van Zandt. I don't know if you.
I've interviewed Chris. Chris, great guy. I love Chris.
Yeah, man. We're pretty good buds. But anyway, well, I had a bet with those guys. I went over to their tent the night before, and so we were. One of the guys they were cooking chili. You know, we were just busting up. And laughing and hitting on each other. But I said, hey, who wants to bet who fires the first shots tomorrow night? They're like, oh, we're going through the burn, man. There's no way, blah, 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 and I was like, okay, whatever, dude. So, but yeah, we actually fired the first shots before they did.
I can see by this. And did you make sure to let them know that once it happened?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, I sure did.
That's awesome. So you're making your way through Iraq. You've taken out all the early warning systems. The war is now fully on. The regular troops have arrived. I always I've heard a lot of Rangers, Delta guys talk about Haditha Dam. And
yeah.
You were at Haditha Dam. Yes. And I frankly don't know much about it. I know that it's important. I doubt many people my age know much about it. Why was Haditha Dam such a critical battle? And can you explain what happened at Haditha Dam?
You bet. And I wrote a book a couple years ago. I don't know if I'm sure you knew that, but Death Waits in the Dark. But that chapter is the biggest chapter in the book about Haditha Dam. And it was so strategically, the dam, it was a hydroelectric dam. So it provided electricity from Haditha, which is pretty good ways north. It's Tigris and Euphrates, and provide electricity all the way down to Baghdad. So for the Iraqis, they needed to secure it to make sure. Plus, there was a great big lake to the north of it, and if anything would have happened, well, it would have flooded all those towns and killed thousands of people, downstream. So our mission was to take and seize the dam, and it was with 375 Rangers, and then we had a few Delta guys with us too, the heavy breachers. So they had to take the dam and then go through it and look for any intelligence or whoever was left there at the dam. And then I never will forget this. They told us expect 24 hours, and then we would be relieved by an armor unit coming through with tanks. So then they would get there, and it was a classic special operations mission to begin with. So the Rangers taking hold, and the weather was really, really bad. So the cloud ceilings were very low, and so they couldn't get fixed wing aircraft in there like F-16s and bombers and B-1s to help support the guys on the ground there. And there was quite a bit of air defense artillery around the dam, of course, to protect it from any body or anything that may come in. In the town of Haditha, which was just to the south, there was a very large Army division of Republican Guards. So they're pretty highly trained soldiers. And then their Fedayeen. So their Fedayeen are their special forces guys so much. And so we got the order to go up there, support 375. And again, it was a busy time. We were planning the rescue of Private Jessica Lynch simultaneously. And I mean, there was a lot going on. So our team of 2AHs, we deployed up on a C-17. They flew us up there. The Rangers had done an airfield seizure. They parachuted into the airfield, which is H1. And it's an old oil field refinery, I think, pump station from back in the day. Some old torn down buildings at the airfield. So we get on the ground, and the Rangers had already deployed. They were headed to the dam. And then by the time we got there, they were on the dam and had there weren't very many folks there, and they had a few engagements. A couple guys had gotten wounded. So we got our AHs off, went up and got our brief from the commander at 375. Well, and then all hell broke loose at the dam. So the division that was the Iraqi division just south had gotten the word that, hey, the Americans had taken the dam. Well, the Iraqis thought that we were going to blow the dam up, and we thought the Iraqis were going to blow the dam up. If we'd have just got on a telephone and says, hey, we're here to protect and hold this dam, we don't want anything, you know what I'm saying? It
Right,
probably
yeah.
it would have saved thousands of lives. But anyway, so there was a massive attack, and there was probably, I think, about 138 Rangers on the dam. And I tried to come up on the radio to contact the Ranger fire supporters there at the dam to get a situation report, so we're not, flying in there blind and to see what was going on. And I could not. I tried and tried and tried. I could hear them, and we were like, doggone, we need to get going. So we take off. It was 2 AHs, and then we had an MH-6 with us also. So that's how we had configured for the beginning days of the Iraqi war. So the MH-6, he had a flare ball on his helicopter. So he acted kind of as our scout. Now, going back to Vietnam, it was called a pink team. So they would have a Loach, a scout, and then 2 Cobra gunships. Well, it was a very effective team in those days. So that's why we put another Little Bird with us, used that as a scout, and then the 2 AHs as the gunships. And then they could use that forward-looking infrared. It's a thermal, so it sees heat, and then give us some early warning, like, hey, I got a target up here. I got some folks. They could see them before we could see them with our night vision goggles. So it was very effective. And if anything happened to us, if we got shot down or had maintenance, then they could come in, pick us up, and take us back. So it gave us a good feeling that other Little Bird was there, so he could take care of us if something happened. So we take off. We're probably a minute or two down the route. It was about an 18-minute flight to the dam. And I'm listening to this on the radio now. I mean, it is chaos. I mean, everybody's calling for fire support. Where are the Little Birds? Hey, I'm being attacked by a company-sized element on the east. We're being attacked it was just everywhere. And I kept calling the fire support NCO, or the fire support sergeant. He was in a blocking position on the west side of the dam. Pardon me. And that was that was always our first contact, is to contact that fire supporter. That's because we're fire supporters. That's what we do. We support the ground force. And I couldn't get him on the radio. And then every time he would key the mic, I could hear the gunfire intensify, to include AKs and automatic weapons from the Iraqis, and then automatic weapons on our side. And guys were screaming and hollering, hey, taking fire from the right, taking fire from the left, and on and on and on. And at this point, we're like, we have got to get there, man. We've got to get there. And I was praying for tailwinds. I was praying for a little extra power, man. I was like, come on, baby, we got to get there. So we're probably about 3 minutes out, and our plan was to come in from the north over the lake, and the dam's to the south. The dam kind of runs east and west. Now, let me give you a picture of this dam. It's one of the largest structures in the world. It's almost 5 miles long and 300 feet tall. I'm thinking dam. I'm like, yeah, okay, I've seen dams at the lake, and, not like Hoover Dam or something like that. So, but we had looked at photographs and, of course, the maps, and had a good idea of the size of this structure. And it was a hydroelectric dam. So there's wires. It looked like a spider web. So wires and helicopters don't mix very well. So that was another, thing that we had to think about and watch out for. So, and again, we're in lead, and then we got a trail aircraft, and then Tony Ely, he was flying the MH, and they just peel off, and then they'll watch our 6 o'clock or watch behind us to make sure nobody, sneaks up on us with some type of weapon system or whatever the case. And I looked at the guy I was flying with, and I was very angry. I said, you know what? A man standing on the moon can talk to Houston, Texas in the 60s, and I'm 5 miles away and I can't talk to this guy. And I was just so frustrated because when they hear us, it's like, oh, okay, they're coming. It gives them some relief, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And we were just nervous as could be. And I just knew those guys because they were about to be overrun. And we came up to the dam. I finally got Mo, I'll say his name. He was the FS NCO, fire support sergeant. And he said, hey, where are you guys? I said, man, we're like a minute out. And he's like, okay. He says, please hurry. Please hurry. And we bumped up over the dam. And what we do is we come in and then we do a cyclic climb. We stay low to the ground. And then we do a cyclic climb. It's called a bump, and that gives us elevation. We bump up to 200 or 300 feet, and then we can look over the battlefield and get a good picture of what's going on in those few seconds. And we were getting ready to bump, and then we look at each other. Me and another pilot look at each other, and we're fucked. Excuse my French, man.
No, it's fine.
But it looked like, imagine the Rolling Stones walking out on stage in London, England, and, when the lights cut and all the flashes, thousands, that's the best way I can explain it, man. I'd never seen so many tracers and missiles and just, oh my gosh, man, it was just crazy. And I pretty much told myself, I said, well, I'm probably going to get killed tonight, but that's okay. I'm here doing what I'm supposed to do, and I got to focus on protecting my buddies on the ground. So we bump up. Right there's the blocking position, and there was about a company-sized element attacking that blocking. So 100 dudes or better. And our first engagement in front of those guys was 12 meters. 12 meters. We shot minigun and rockets, and then our Dash 2, he came over, and we'll split up that target or personnel or whatever. And they're not going to shoot what we shoot, so they made an engagement. We came back around, made another engagement each, and then I got a call for fire from the east side of the dam. So we were like, oh my gosh, man, this is going to be a long, long night. So again, another ranger over there was calling for fire support. They were being attacked. So I called him I answered him, and I said, hey, we're going to be right there, man. Just hold on. I mean, there were hundreds of lasers and again, tracers and wires and it was pretty chaotic.
How long did it take you guys to beat back the Iraqi forces, and how many of the Iraqis do you think even survived to retreat?
I'd say that first night it was probably a force of 4,000 or 5,000. Yeah, it was a division of Iraqis, so you're looking at probably 8,000 to 10,000 personnel in that division. And it was just wave. It was just, and I've watched old movies from the Civil War to Korea to Vietnam, and it was just a wave after wave after wave of those enemy soldiers attacking us, attacking the dam, because they thought that we were going to blow the dam up. So they're trying to protect their homes and their what they had there. So
how long from the moment it started to the ending of Haditha Dam? Was it a day, 2 days? How long did it take for the whole thing to be resolved?
The 24-hour mission was 7 days.
Oh, really? A week?
Yes, sir. Yeah. But it was the biggest battle of the Iraqi war. I mean, no question about it. But nothing was ever really written about it, or and there were eyewitness so many acts of heroism over those nights, and guys would get wounded, and guys would, Greg Birch, he was the sergeant major there at 375 at the time. I'd watch him run up and down that dam, telling the guys, "Hey, stay in the fight. You got, what do you need? You need ammo. You need water. Hey, the AHs are here. We're gonna be good." And he actually rescued a couple of wounded Iraqi soldiers that had been shot in the assault, and under fire, ran down there and drug this guy back to safety. And he's a former Delta operator. And yeah, just, man, it was just crazy. And read the book. the detailed, very detailed stories in there. And I know I'm leaving a lot of things out, but yeah, it was a very big battle, and we're all just blessed to be here today after flying through that crap night after night after night.
It's absolutely unbelievable. Now, I want to get into when you did get shot down in Iraq. Yeah. This is the part of the interview I'm most excited to get into, because you don't really get to meet people who have been shot down in combat. It's a very rare thing. So, what year was it, and can you walk us through everything that happened?
You bet. Yes, sir. So it was 19 March 2004, exactly a year after we started the war is when I got shot down. It was a year later. So I'll set the stage. So if you can look in your mind, or if you can pull up a map, so there's Ramadi, and then there's Fallujah, and then to the south is a little place called Amaria. So that's a triangle. And in that triangle was probably some of the worst fighting since World War II. I mean, it was just full of Al-Qaeda and terrorists and bad guys, and we call it the Wild Wild West. It was the Wild Wild West, man. And we'd been going in there, Fallujah, Ramadi, and hitting targets every night for months now. So we get intel, hey, there's a high-ranking, official here. Let's go hit that target. And then we get more intel. There's another guy that we're looking for. So we go hit another. We'd hit, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 targets a night, depending on the time of year. Because in the wintertime, you have more, longer period of darkness. So that would give us more time to work. Whereas in the summer, darkness is shorter, and we might hit 3 or 4 targets, that night. In the wintertime, we could hit several targets. And we'd been up for several days chasing bad guys at B Squadron Delta. We were working with on that rotation, and of course the Rangers. So we'd hit a target that night or early morning of the 19th. And it was just about to get daylight. And so we got some intel off of that target that another guy we were looking for was going to be at a meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning in Fallujah. And we were like, oh, 10 o'clock in the morning, daytime, bad. And the sergeant major is like, hey, I want you guys, we had a little area to the east of Fallujah where we could land our helicopters. We had some fuel bladders there, so if we need fuel, we could get it. Guys would bring ammo in for us. So he said, hey, you guys, you stay here, crank up, get on the radios. We're going to drive in, at 10 in the morning and capture this guy. So they did. They drove to the house, hit the house, and they came back. And after talking to this fella, there was a higher ranking dude in Amaria that we wanted. So Sergeant Major, we talked about it for a bit, and troop commander, and they said, hey, we're going to drive down there and kill that guy, and we'll head back to Baghdad. And I was like, okay, roger that. So we went back to Baghdad. At that time, we were still on the west side of Baghdad International Airport, living in a big hangar. That's where all the special ops folks were. So we fly back. They drive, they take off, start to drive down to San Maria to hit that target. And it was probably about, 12, 15. Yeah, somewhere around there. They came running out and said, hey, the recce troop, those were the Delta guys. The recce troop had been ambushed. Can you guys go help them? We're like, absolutely, we're going. So we jumped in the aircraft, hauled ass out there, got on station, and they had 2 Panders, which are big armored 6-wheeled vehicles, and then they had 3 gun trucks, up-armored gun trucks at the time, Humvees with 50 cals, and one truck had dual 240Gs on it. But a Ranger mans those up guns on the Delta trucks just to help those guys. So we get on station and start doing a recon around, clear the area, make sure nobody's trying to flank on those guys or maneuver on them or whatever the case. And we cleared the area and came back. And I mean, it was just, from the time I cranked the helicopter, the hair stood up on the back of my neck. I said, okay, we're in a little black helicopter. It's daytime, and we're going to one of the most dangerous places on the planet. So, oh gosh, here we go again. And my co-pilot, whoever's not flying in an AH, well, you've got your M4 up and ready. So if a target pops up, you can suppress it or engage it and shoot it, whatever the case. But it's very effective, and we're very good shots out of that helicopter. We train to it and practice it. So I told him, I said, hey man, I don't, if you see anything, I want you to shoot it. I don't care. And just call out. So we get on station. There's bad guys running around everywhere, and we made a couple engagements. And then the troop commander called. He says, hey, we're going to exfil here in a couple minutes. That means we're going to leave and go back to Baghdad. They completed their mission. And we were all like, okay, man, let's get out of here, dude. It is killing us. So we made a couple more passes, and it was about 1:15 in the afternoon. And I always do like a low pass, over the ground force just to say, hey, hey, you guys, we're good. Let's go home. And I'd done that, and I was pulling out. I was in a climbing right-hand turn going towards the southwest, and just all of a sudden this giant explosion. That's the best I can explain it. And the aircraft shuddered, and all the warning. So in aircraft, like if you have an engine failure, you'll get a caution warning light, and then you'll get a tone, in your headset. And this, something went right by my head. And at that moment in time, the best way I can explain it is that everything slowed down, and it was like an old movie reel, went frame by frame by frame by frame. And the human body is just, it's incredible. And adrenaline and all these things that happen to us under stress or duress. And my training kicked in. We train. I'm an instructor pilot, so I've done a lot of auto rotations. So when you lose an engine in a helicopter, we have a maneuver called an auto rotation, and it's just a powered off landing. But you have to do some things in the cockpit to make sure that's successful. You lower the collective, and then, you have to get the aircraft in trim, and then find a spot where you're going to land. So I was watching, I can remember scanning my instruments, because pilots use elevation to help judge your height off the ground. So a building, a tree, a telephone pole, something that, because at 75 feet in this helicopter, you have to start a decel to bleed off your airspeed. So I had a radar altimeter, so I was watching it because there was nothing to look at outside to help me judge my height above the ground. So I saw 75 feet. The rotor got a little bit high, so I added a little bit of collective, and I was looking, you look right through your pedals in the chin bubble as to where you're going to land. And that particular helicopter, the old guys always said, yeah, that thing falls like a greased crowbar. So be aware, it comes out of the sky pretty fast with no engine. So I remember, so I saw 75 feet. I started my decel, and then thinking, I'm like, I don't know the condition of the ground, so I want to minimize my ground run. So after you land, you always travel a certain distance, depending on the terrain. So I said, okay, and I was heavy, and I had a tailwind. I was in the worst condition to conduct an auto rotation I could be in. So at about 20 feet, I said, to myself, I'm gonna level the aircraft, and then I'm gonna pull everything I've got left. So what you do, the collective controls the pitch of the blades. So I'm gonna just pull all I got left, and then that'll, those blades will bite, and then cushion our landing. And hopefully we won't roll too far when we touch down. And I did that. We touched down, and I was like, okay, we're okay, we're on the ground. And the terrain out there, it's just real fine dirt. It's like talcum powder, dust. And that filled the cockpit. So I was just holding everything, I was lowering the collective to get the weight down on the skids and praying that, that would help reduce our ground run. Again, I didn't know if it was, rocky, I didn't know what the condition was of the ground. So I'm doing the best I can. And we started to slide. And then I felt the aircraft kind of coming up like this. And I was like, oh crap, man. And then I remember hearing the rotor blades hit the ground. And now I'm like, I'm leaning back in the aircraft. It's just a human instinct, I think. It's like, if you got kids and you're driving in your car and you slam your brakes, well, what do? You throw your arm out there, And my co-pilot said I did that. When we were getting ready to roll on over, he said I threw my arm out, to protect him. And again, it's just what we do as humans. And I remember hearing the rotor blades beating the ground, and I'm like, oh Lord, man, I know we're going to be okay. And that was the last thing I remembered, is hearing those rotor blades. And then I came to, I know both of us were knocked out. Of course, we never said anything because an aviator, if you lose consciousness, you're automatically grounded for 2 years. And we didn't want to be grounded for 2 years. There was a war going on, and, people depended on us. But anyway, later on I was like, no, Doc, I'm good. No, we never lost consciousness. We're good to go. But both of us got beat up pretty bad. So I came to, and the first thing you do after a traumatic event is, I check my body. Can I move my feet? Yeah. My leg's still there. Yeah. I looked down, and again, there was just dust. You couldn't see. I couldn't see in front of my face, and I could hear gunfire. I could hear automatic weapons. So I knew that the Delta guys were, they were engaged in a gunfight. I could hear the other AH shooting, and I said, okay, I need to continue my assessment. So I look at my hands, and I just checked my body to make sure everything was still, that I was alive. I was like, all right, man, we got this. And then I heard this popping, and I'm like, okay, that's not gunfire. And in these few seconds, I'm trying to gain situational awareness and and we were upside down. So that's how the aircraft rolled 3 times, tore the tail boom off, and that particular helicopter was designed to do that. Mr. Hughes, that designed that helicopter in 1955, I think, and is still flying today, but he designed it that way for that reason. So if it ever rolled, that it would keep the pilot safe in the helicopter. And it did. It worked as advertised. And for some odd reason, I thought about popcorn, because it was pop, 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 pop. Well, it was the ammo cooking off right behind my head. It was on fire. And then I was like, oh, crap, man, that's the ammo. And I had rockets on board. So I thought about those. What would they do when they catch on fire? Would they explode? Would they go off? I had no idea. So at that particular moment, my priority was myself and my co-pilot to get us out of that helicopter and to get in a safe area.
Now, real quick, you said your co-pilot had an M4. Were you also armed? Did you have a rifle yourself?
Yeah, we both carry our weapons up in the cockpit with us. We have a little rack, so whoever's flying, your M4 will fit right there. I mean, it's right there at your hand in the right seat, and then the left seater, it's right there, and they've always got their rifle up and ready.
So when you are on the ground now, are you being shot at? Like, are you returning fire, or is no one paying attention to where you are?
No, the ground force, the Delta guys, were engaged in a gunfight to the east of us. We're about 300 meters from that little area and 2 of the guys saw the missile shot. So the missile, or the weapon system that shot me down, was a highly technologically advanced system. It was Russian. It was an SA-16 surface-to-air missile, but it's a shoulder-fired system that seeks heat. So they use it to shoot down jets and helicopters and things like that. It's designed specifically for aircraft. So it seeks that heat from the engine, and then when it gets close, it's got a proximity fuse. So that fuse will measure that distance to that heat source, and then it will explode. So it sends all these little fragments into that aircraft instead of, like an RPG or a rocket, where it's just one projectile and it might hit and it might not. So that's why those systems are more effective against aircraft. It's like a shotgun blast. Boom. So, and it worked as advertised. So it had hit the engine, and the engine went out, but the guys on the ground were engaged. And so once I checked myself, I kind of undo my shoulder harness and my seatbelt, and I grabbed my rifle. I look over at my co-pilot and I said, hey, get your rifle and meet me over here, because on a armed gunship, you don't want to get in front of it in case a bullet goes off or a rocket goes off or whatever. So we always meet we use clock positions. So 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and we were both pretty jacked up. So I said, meet me over here, instead of saying, meet me at 3 o'clock, like over here. Well, when he looked at me, he had blood all over his face. And I was like, oh, no. And this fella, he was a junior. This is his first combat tour. He was brand new to the unit. And I'm like, welcome to B Company. Get your ass out now. So now I'm thinking, okay, did he get hit? Why is there blood all over his face? And then I thought the Little Bird, it has a bad reputation for the shoulder harness not locking in a crash sequence. And I know a couple guys that this has happened to. So they crashed, the shoulder harness didn't lock. So they hit the cyclic with their mouth. It knocked all their teeth out. There's a couple fellas I know that happened to. So that was the first. I was like, oh crap, maybe his shoulder harness didn't lock, and he hit his mouth or whatever the case. And And I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, "Are you okay?" And he was still looking kind of straight ahead. And I said, "Are you okay?" And he kind of did one nod, and I said, "Okay." I said, "Get your ass out." I'm not kidding. So I crawl out, got my rifle, and my first priority now is security of the aircraft. So 360 degrees, little black helicopter just shot down. And I'm not kidding. I was thinking Black Hawk down, Black Hawk down. Here we go. Daytime, black helicopter, bad things happen. So I attempt to stand up. I do stand up, and I took a step and I fell down. I go, So I stood back up, I took a step, and I fell. I did this 2 or 3 times. And the other AH, they had come back around to check us because the helicopter was fully engulfed in fire now. And he told us like, yeah, he said, I came back to land because we hadn't seen you guys, and, we were trying to service targets for the ground force. And then we saw you crawl out. We're like, okay, they're good. And they they watched me. And later they were like, it was kind of funny, man. You look like a clown. You're up, he's down. He's up, he's down. He's up, he's down. What the heck's going on? Well, I thought my leg was broken. So about that third time I hit the ground, I just pulled my pant legs up and, checked both of my legs and checked my body again. And I'm like, okay. Well, what had happened is in that I compressed that L spine, and I got a stinger, and it just put my leg to sleep for a very short time. And so that's what was going on there. And then I got up and I made it all the way around the aircraft just to make sure nobody was, any enemy were coming towards us. And I looked back and my co-pilot still hadn't gotten out. And I'm like, holy smokes, man, this thing's burning. I mean, an aircraft burns, you got all those metals and fuel and oils and this thing was, and I even thought about, we carry a little rucksack that goes right behind our heads in the cargo area. We all carry them, and it's got water, grenades, ammo, things that we could use and need. Well, I thought, well, I'm going to get my rucksack out of there. And when I turned around and looked, well, that cargo area was fully engulfed in fire. And I'm like, I'm not putting my arm in there to get that stupid rucksack out of there. So I come back around, co-pilot's still in there, and I get down on my knees and I scream at him. I said, get out of the helicopter now. So I get back up, and, again, my priority is protection of my crew and, where we are at that time. And I kind of walked to the right a little bit, and then I look back again and no co-pilot. So I ran back over there. I get down on the ground. I crawl in the cockpit. I didn't say anything to him. And I reach up and I grab his latch on his seatbelt. Now he's upside down. And I just pull that latch, and he goes, don't, lands on his head and crumples down in a pile. And I just grab him and I pull him. I pull him on top of me, and I push, and I just push again. I push again, and now we're clear of the aircraft. And I'm like, I told you to get out. I said, you're about to burn up. But that last time, his arm, the fire was just like rolling right there at his arm. And I mean, it was just, it was seconds away before it engulfed that cockpit. And so I get him out, and we kind of crawl over to that right side, and there's a bit of a defilade. So, a low spot there in the ground. And I'm like, okay, this will be a good spot to defend if we have to. And so I start checking him, and I keep checking around, making sure nobody's coming up. And I tell him, I say, hey, let me see your teeth, do like that. Okay, he's got his teeth. And I'm like, doggone, I wonder what happened. Because you don't want to tell somebody that, holy cow, man, you look really bad, because it'll send them another level of shock. And we're both in shock, and we're both busted up and beat up. So I told him, I said, stick out your tongue. And he had bit way through his tongue. I was like, oh, man. I said, okay. I said, you're going to be okay. I promise. And so we set up. I was looking to the north. I was up on a knee, and he was in a prone looking to the east. And I told him, I said, hey, if you see something or hear something, reach over, give me a squeeze, or tell me, hey, I got contact, 12 o'clock, whatever. Let's put both eyes on it. Both guns were kind of jacked up right now because I didn't want to accidentally shoot a good guy, just come check on us. And then it was, and people ask me, well, how much time he last? I have no idea. I really don't. And seemed like a lifetime a couple times, and then I heard a truck. I said, hey, I got a vehicle coming. I said, just let's get over here and let's put both guns on it. And we were at the low ready. And then I see a ball cap. I see a head kind of, it was running, bouncing. I see this ball cap and I see the face and the beard. And then I like, oh, I know him. That's Chaz. That's my buddy. So one of the Delta guys they thought we were dead because all they saw was, the black smoke and the burning helicopter. And he runs up to us, hugs us, and he was like, man, we thought you guys are dead. I said, no, we ain't dead, brother. And later he said, I asked him if he had a fire extinguisher so I could go put out the fire. He goes, no, Greg, it's past, saving.
Had they taken out the guy who'd fired the missile at you?
They didn't know. Like I said earlier, two guys saw the missile shot. It came from a 2-story building in this little ville. And so they immediately started to suppress. And actually, one of the Rangers in one of the gun trucks, we all carry these little plastic, Kodak crank cameras. We weren't supposed to have cameras, but we carried them anyway. Well, he saw the missile hit me, and he threw his camera up and snapped a picture of it. And I go, bro, why weren't you suppressing the target instead of taking, a Kodak moment? You're taking pictures. And we laughed about it. And his name's Jeremy Smith. And he goes, no, man. I was like, holy cow. He said, I took a picture. And then I started to suppress, and I said, okay. But he had actually captured me on fire in the air. You could see the fire coming from the helicopter. And it was, it's pretty, I have that picture. And it's pretty cool. But anyway, so Chaz gets there to us. And he asked me, he says, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go find that motherfucker and kill him. Yeah. He's like, get in the truck, Gravy. Let's go, brother. So we get in the truck, and there's a team medic, and, special operations medics, man, they're the best in the world. I mean, they're professionals, and every one of them trusts those guys with our lives, and they have saved so many men on the battlefield over the years. We call them Doc, but they're the best. They are. So we come pulling up there, and a couple of guys were surprised to see us. They're like, God, man, we figured you guys were crispy critters by now, and here you are, got your M4s, and, you're ready to go. And troop commander came over, sergeant major came over, and Chaz says, hey, Greg wants to attack that building. And they're like, oh, roger that, let's go. So Doc was working on us. He was sticking needles in us and tubes and pills and, checking us. And I noticed he kept looking at the troop commander like, we need to get these guys out of here, man. They're pretty fucked up. And looking forward, I've had 43 surgeries, and I have 47 pieces of titanium in me from that crash. So, and I just, my buddies hack on me all the time. They're like, hey, you remember when you crashed? And I'm like, I didn't crash. I got shot down. There's a difference. They're like, no, man, you crashed.
So do you assault the building then?
Yes. So we get loaded up. Well, first of all, the troop commander says, hey, Greg, he says, you need to hear this. there's a bunch of radio chatter now, and we have standard operating procedures. When an aircraft goes down, everything stops, and the focus is to get that crew. That's it. And so they had contacted the theater-dedicated combat search and rescue, Special Operations Air Force, okay? That's their whole mission in their life. And they refused to come get us. They said it was too risky. I said, and the troop commander was like, holy cow, man. He says, hey, we got you guys. We got Doc. We'll get you out of here. It's all good. So I got on the radio. I called back to our TOC, our Tactical Operations Center. So simultaneously, they said that every helicopter, cooks, dishwashers, crew chiefs, everybody was on a helicopter with a gun coming to get us. They loaded on everything. Then I said, do not come in here. Do not. I personally thought it was a trap. And again, I go into detail in the book about it. So I said, hey, you guys go hold east of Fallujah. And if we need you, we'll get out of here, this area. And then, we'll get fixed wing overhead, F-16s or some kind of fire support, because that's what we'll do. We want to secure that area and make sure it's safe before we bring in other aircraft. And I know those Air Force crews, I know those guys would have come, man. It came from, channels way higher than them to not come and get us. But it really made me angry. And I told them, I said, I would have come got you, man. I would have, because that's what we do.
Right.
Anyway, so we load up on these trucks and we get in line. It was probably good, 100, 150 meters to the building where the shot came from. And I told them, I says, I want to go to that building. I want to clear that building. I want to go to the roof and see if there's any evidence up there, a box, any dunnage or something. And both guys that saw the shot said it was an SA-16. So every missile system, they leave a smoke signature and then a corkscrew. And we're trained to, if I see a shot, I can look at that smoke signal, and I can tell you what system it is. It's an SA-7. It's an SA.
Right.
Everyone's different. Everyone has a different signature is what I'm trying to say. And they both said it was a 16, man. There's no doubt about it. Later, they did confirm that it was an SA-16. And at the time, in that Devil's Triangle, okay, there had been 8 helicopters shot down in less than 2 months. We were number 8. We were also the last. We're also the only crew to survive out of those 8 shoot downs. And
were they all Army shoot downs for the most part?
No, there was I think a Navy CH-46. There was a couple Marine, I think a Marine Cobra, a Marine Huey, a couple of Chinooks, and some Army 58s, the 58Ds. Yes, sir. The best I recall. But the guy, I think it was one dude running around in there in that triangle shooting down helicopters. And he had 8.
And you think he's now in this house?
Yes.
Okay. So you're at the house, you're getting ready to roll in. What happens from that point?
Yeah, so we get in the trucks. We start laying in suppressive fires. We start taking fire from that small ville or that small town. And I'm in the back right seat with the troop commander, and I'm looking, I kind of look to the left, I kind of look to the right, and we're hauling ass across this desert. And you're probably too young to remember this old show called Rat Patrol.
Never seen it.
Well, that was in my time period. But it was about these British commandos running around North Africa in World War II hunting Germans. And they'd be in these Jeeps, but that's what I thought about when I looked to the right, looked to the left, because we're all online, hauling ass across this desert, and the guys were shooting. And so we get about 50 meters from the building, and our truck goes and we get stuck in some mud. and now we're under fire, and we're like, oh crap, man, now, you know. So we get out, we get to our corners, and one of the Panders, it's a big armored vehicle. So he peels off to come pull us out of the mud, and I'm watching on my corner, and on all these houses in the Mideast, they have a roof access. They're flat roofs and then a roof access. Well, this dude comes kind of running out on the roof, and he's in a black, we call them man dresses, but he's in a black man dress, which that tells me he's a bad guy, but he's on a cell phone. And I go, hey, Sergeant Major, I said, I got a target. He's on a phone. He said, well, shoot that son of a bitch. And I said, okay. Well, the dude runs back in, you know, to the little access area. Well, and then he comes back out, and he picks his phone up. Well, I shoot him. I put 2 in his chest and drop him. And then Jeremy said, action 10 o'clock. So he's moving his guns to the left, and he starts to engage a building. And then 2 guys, they come out of a house. One's carrying an AK, the other got an RPG. So I engage them. I drop both of them. And it's just, I mean, it's a gunfight going on. And this Pander's maneuvering to get behind us. And the guy jumps out with like a snatch strap, hooks it to us, pulls us out of the mud. And then we get back in, all this under fire. And it was just crazy, man. I was like, this is not happening right now. You know, we just survived a shoot down and da-da-da-da-da, but I wanted to get to that building. I wanted to clear it and see, and I wanted to shoot that son of a bitch that shot me down. And so they get to the building, we clear it. It was 2-story. So the boys, they clear it, and there's nothing on the roof. This dude was clean, man. He was clean. And he was highly trained because he waited for me for the perfect shot. You know, there's some things that have to happen before you do a shot with a system like that. Like I wasn't into the sun, or the guy was a professional. And so we come out of that building, and the sergeant major grabs me. He goes, hey, let's go have a chat with some of these dudes, you know. So we're grabbing people off the street, you know. Hey, where'd he go? Did you see him? Who was it? You know, and they didn't know. And he spoke fluent, you know, language for that part of the world. So we never did find anything. And we kind of went through the Ville looking around, and we're like, okay, we need to get back to the aircraft, because we have sensitive items. So sensitive items are weapons, or, you know, radios, things that we don't want the enemy to get a hold of or to pick up. But they had already called a unit from the 82nd, and they were there at the aircraft and had secured it. And so we get to the site, and guys, they took pictures. I just wanted to capture that for the investigation, and, you know, for later data. But yeah, there was nothing left of that helicopter. It was all burned up. And so we're like, okay, so now what's the plan? And so our major said, hey, let's go to Ramadi. You know, that's where our mission support site was. And we were like, hey, let's roll out, let's go. So long story short, it was a 6-hour gunfight. And then we roll out. We have to go through Fallujah again. So we fight our way through Fallujah, back to the highway. We get to Ramadi, fight our way through Ramadi, because the MSS was in the northeast corner on the river. And by now it's 10 o'clock at night. And yeah, we drive through the gate. And it was just that sense of security. I think that, okay, we're safe now. We're safe. We're in the compound. 2 of their doctors were standing there waiting on us. And I mean, we pulled up, and we're just getting ready to park. And I got sick to my stomach. I had a concussion. I had traumatic brain injury. I threw the door open, and I just rolled out, and I started throwing up. and the docs grabbed me, and of course they grabbed the other guy. He was sick too, and then about, I don't know, probably 5 minutes later, one of our 160th Blackhawks land right there at the compound to pick us up, and they docs and medics were there, and they load us up, and then they take us to the cache, the hospital there in Baghdad. So.
Well, Greg, I got to be honest with you, man. That is one of the absolute craziest stories, both Haditha Dam and that. And I want to say thank you. We're running up on time here. I want to say thank you for your awesome stories. And I would really like to have you back maybe in 6 to 9 months, and we can kind of get into some more stories. I do apologize. We're on a tight hour and a half time window today. But, Greg, this has been absolutely awesome. This is one coolest. And so you're welcome back anytime, and I really appreciate this.
Thank you.